Jaguars are known for their aggressive nature and attack anything they perceive as a threat to their territory or food source. They are powerful hunters who use their strong jaws and sharp claws to take down large prey. So when a dog named Jack unwittingly made its way into a jaguar enclosure, everyone was worried the poor animal would become Predator's next meal. But no one expected what happened next. Jack was friendly with his owner Simon on a wildlife reserve in Africa. He loved to go for walks, play games, sit in the warm sun, soak up the rays, and nap surrounded by nature. The wildlife was generally quiet, and there was a wide open space house where the dog could run and play. It was very rare for wild animals to make their way anywhere near the home. So Simon was happy to let Jack roam. There was one time when Jack encountered an elephant. The large animal came lumbering out of the trees and took Jack by surprise. The little dog yelled in shock and ran as fast as he could back to the safety of Simon in the house. But soon he realized the elephant was no danger to him. He wanted to go back and play with it. On the other hand, Simon was not as keen on letting Jack play with such a large animal. Elephants can weigh many tons. If that giant accidentally stepped on the small dog, it would spell disaster. But that was just an example of how friendly and fearless Jack was. He loved to meet other animals, play with them, and make new friends. Simon often felt terrible because there were plenty of animals in the wildlife reserve, and there were few other dogs for Jack to run and play with. He did his best to try and keep his dog entertained and happy, but every now and then he would feel a pang of guilt and sadness that Jack had no proper animal friends. One day, Simon received a phone call from several other rangers who worked in the wildlife reserve, telling him to be cautious, and cautious because a jaguar had been spotted nearby. Simon was never afraid of animals being near his property. After all, that's why he became a ranger. But having a vicious and dangerous carnivorous predator stalking in the trees not too far from his home. Luckily, no one had been killed or injured by the jaguars on the wildlife reserve yet. However, he still didn't want to test his lucky star, so to be safe, Simon kept Jack inside for several days. The little dog was obviously frustrated and wanted to be out in the open air, but Simon didn't want to tempt the jaguar to come any closer. The only time was allowed outside was when Simon was with him, and even then he was on a very short leash. One morning, Simon awoke at his usual time. He sat up in the bed, yawning, wrapped the sleep out of his eyes, and stood out, heading to the kitchen to make a coffee and find something to eat for breakfast. But there was something wrong. Something was missing. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, and it wasn't until he was pouring a coffee that he realized Jack wasn't in his bed. The dog was usually up and awake at the same time as him, but he always stayed in his bed for a little while. Simon made his breakfast, but there was no sign of Jack. Simon grew concerned and ran from room to room looking for his beloved dog, but Jack couldn't find it anywhere. However, he discovered that the door was slightly ajar, as was the window. There was more than enough room for the dog to get through. Simon's eyes went wide at the realization, and he ran to his friend's room to look out the window. There he saw something that made his heart skip a beat, and his blood run cold. The jaguar pounced, grabbing the dog in its powerful jaws and preparing to end its life. But just as the jaguar was about to deliver the final bite, something strange happened. The dog, which had seemed so helpless just moments before, suddenly transformed into a fierce and powerful warrior. With a mighty roar, the dog fought back against the jaguar, using its strength and cunning to overpower the big cat. The jaguar was taken aback by the sudden change in its prey, and it hesitated for a moment. That hesitation was all the dog needed. It lunged forward and tackled the jaguar to the ground, where they wrestled and fought fiercely. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the dog emerged victorious. The jaguar lay on the ground, defeated and panting, while the dog stood tall and proud, its fur matted with sweat and dirt. But the dog knew it was still in danger, even in its victory. The jaguar was not the only predator in the jungle. It would need to stay alert and ready to defend itself if it wanted to survive. Jack was on the floor, and a giant jaguar pounced on him, seemingly tormenting the poor little. Simon had heard stories of how jaguars torment and play with their prey before killing them. It was a sign of a sadistic way to kill defenseless animals. But it's just the way jaguars and other big cats, such as lions and tigers, did things. It was natural, but it still didn't change the fact that Simon had to save his poor dog. And he would hate to see his beloved pet die this way. The jaguar's erasers, like claws and sharp pointy teeth, could easily finish off Jack. Simon grabbed his gun and was ready to shoot the jaguars to stop the attack, when something made him stop in his tracks. Something that he did not expect to see. Jack's tail was wagging, as if he was enjoying himself. And strangely, the little dog looked uninjured. In fact, it seemed like he was having the best time of his life. Simon slowly laid his gun down and continued watching through the window. Suddenly interested in what was going on, the jaguar pounced on Jack and bit aggressively. There were no claws involved, nor was it baring its teeth. It was simply tapping at the dog. Suddenly, Jack leaped up and ran at the jaguar, who flopped down on its back and rolled around as the dog climbed on it and playfully fought with it. They were actually playing. It was a game. Simon was so shocked that he let out a little laugh. After an hour, the jaguar seemed tired and started heading back into the trees. Simon opened the door slightly and called Jack back to him, and the dog happily entered through the door. Simon picked and checked him all over, but found no single cut or scratch on him, and he must have been playing with the predator for over an hour, but he sustained not a single injury. Later that day, Jack was again begging to go outside, peeking from the door. Simon noticed the jaguar laid casually at the end of the garden, as if they were waiting for a play date with the dog. Again, Jack slipped through the door, and the two animals played and rolled around and had a lot of fun. It was a most unlikely friendship, but a beautiful one too. And for the next years, the jaguar would keep coming back to see Jack. They formed a strong connection, and the two became best friends. They played, rolled around, and even just sat in the sun together with Jack, laying against the giant jaguar. Unfortunately, though, things couldn't stay the same forever. Jack's owner, Simon, had to move several hours away for work, and Jack would have to go with him. This would separate Jack and the jaguar forever. Despite being small, Simon understood that his dog was very emotionally driven. It would undoubtedly miss its unlikely friends, and he would not know why they had to leave. It was a lovely story between two animals with opposite natures, showing that even the unlikely animals can become friends and have a closeness. Now, it's a short question to you of how you would have reacted if Jaguar befriended your dog. Share your thoughts down in the comments section, as we'd love to read them.